Well, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are joining us from. It gives me very great pleasure to welcome everybody to today's Cardiff Japanese online lecture series. The purpose of this lecture series is to share contemporary relevant information and understand cultural context for recognizing the multifaceted aspects of Japanese society in a broader sense. We aim at exploring societal cultural aspects of language learning for those studying Japanese language and culture, as well as various learners, teachers, and researchers with an interest in Japan. This series can't happen without the incredible support of the Japan Foundation London office, to whom we are incredibly grateful for supporting us during this series that we've been running. I'm Dr. Christopher Hood. I'm a reader in Japanese studies at the Cardiff Studies Centre, and it gives me very great pleasure to be hosting today's webinar event. Just to run you through the schedule for today. So we've just started the webinar. As I'm sure you're aware, you were asked to note that the session is being recorded. Please keep your microphones muted throughout. If you have any questions, please use the question and answer box. Keep an eye out for other people's questions there. You can use the upvote function so that myself and a colleague, Professor Michael Hamford, can keep an eye on the questions and ensure that we get to certain key questions when we reach that time. Please do not bother using the raise hand function during the lecture or using chat. These will not be used. The lecture itself will be starting shortly. And then after the lecture, we hope to have around about 20 minutes for question and answer, and we will then be finishing promptly at 11 o'clock. And the video will be available on YouTube in due course, and I will tell you more about that at the end of the session. So just very briefly, an introduction to today's speaker, Professor Hiromasa Tanaka, who's a professor at the School of Humanities, Meisei University, Japan. He teaches research methodology courses for graduate students and project-based courses for undergraduate students. As a consultant, Professor Tanaka has been involved in a number of human resource development system designs for business corporations, and today we'll be speaking to us on a very interesting topic, and I will now hand over to him to tell you all about it. Please, Professor Tanaka.
Thank you very much, Professor Hood, and good morning, everybody in the UK, and also for some people, good afternoon or good evening. My name is Hiromasa Tanaka. As Professor Hood talked, I am working as also a consultant, and recently I've been working with the Japanese companies team building sessions with the non-Japanese people using Japanese language. So this could be an issue in Japanese societies, that communicating because of this expand of the Japanese language teaching and also available resources worldwide. There are quite a few people who speak Japanese and use Japanese languages. And those people work with Japanese native speakers. And for Japanese, it is also a kind of challenging situations to make them understand and to understand them. So today, I'll be talking about the job site talk with of Japanese and also with some non-Japanese people involved in sort of mobile instant messaging conversations. Okay, let me share my PowerPoint. Okay, so the topic today is about Ho-Ren-So. And for people who it's a kind of middle level learners, probably know, or even not so beginning level learners probably know that Ho-Ren-So means spinach. But in this case, when we say Ho-Ren-So in business, it's very different. It's a kind of very tight-knitted network of the communication with the report, document, and also consultations between the workers. This is a very basic notion, and even high school students use this word when they work in a team. So it's kind of taken for granted notion what Ho-Ren-So means, particularly teenagers and also adults. However, some Japanese learners probably not familiar with these notions. And when they start working in Japanese companies, probably the managers would always confirm that you'll be following the Ho-Ren-So pattern message within the organization. So this is kind of important for people who work with Japanese using Japanese languages, and yet not very much discussed in the past. Okay. So what I'm doing is showing some examples, empirical data of Nihongo for the workplace, in the workplace, and particularly on instant messaging communications. When we talk about Japanese language in the workplace, there are quite a few contextual factors in the workplace conversations. It's not really vocabulary or grammar or pronunciations or even kanji. These variables sometimes make a big challenge for the non-native Japanese language speakers. I think some people in this audience probably know that keigo. Keigo is honorific. And usually the keigo is used based on the hierarchical relationship between the people. Sometimes it's age, sometimes it's a position of the company. Sometimes it's more complex relationship between the same level people in keigo. And keigo is also used to show a distance between the speakers. So if the Japanese language learners use too much keigo among the intimate people, it might be possible that this person is excluded from the very intimate group because he or she tries to keep the distance between the speakers. So keigo is one of the contextual factors. Also, human resource management system. This is how the company employee and how they evaluate and how they place in a different job site. And this would also give some influences to the Japanese language speakers. And also, aisatsu is another interesting part of this Japanese language in the job site. Aisatsu is greeting, but when we describe the young people, we sometimes say that he cannot even greet. This means aisatsu mo dekinai. And this would mean he lacks some common knowledge or among the working in the Japanese organization. So aisatsu is another issue. Also, uchi, soto, and honne, tatemae is the kind of what people really think is honne, and what it's superficially talked about is tatemae. For example, one of my research data shows that when the Japanese people are working in India with the translator in India, interpreter in India, while they were working with the interpreters, they always said, your interpretation was very nice. Thank you very much for the kind interpretations. But after they left, they complained to the travel agent who arranged this interpreter. And actually, what they talked with the interpreter was tatemae. And when they returned, they actually talked about what they really felt. So these are the kind of example of the variables in the workplace conversations. Let me share one of the keigo example. Desu, masu is the polite, formal way to end the sentence. For example, I'm writing the same thing. これと同じものを書いています。Is must is the polite way. But dayo is it's considered to be plain or casual way to end the sentence. Like これと同じものを書いている or います or いるよ. These are the kind of formal ways. And actually, when the learners learn honorifics, they probably explain that honorifics is used to show the respect to the listeners. So that means when they are in a higher position or senior place, then they will use honorifics. However, this is a kind of example from my past research. When the manager in the workplace talked with their people, they are using both on the very polite form and the casual form in the same speech. But these two speech, the switch of the switching from the polite to casual meant something. For example, the first example is the polite form. Manager was, in this case, manager was going to tell that their system has changed. And the department policy has to be clearly defined in in front of the employees. So manager says, the managers were told that managers need to write their department policy. Here's what I developed. By using polite form, he showed the department policy to their employees in the polite form. But a few minutes later, he used a very casual form, saying that I chose this organization because I didn't want to write things like this. That means I chose to work in this company because I didn't like to write this kind of things, the department policies. But now I need to write. So the first half is in a very polite form. And when he talks in a polite form, he shows that he's talking about the superficial, formal statement, tatemae. But when he switched to the casual form, he tried to let the audience know that he's talking about his real feeling, honne. So by switching the mode, by switching the form from the polite to casual, he tried to tell the audience that he's talking about his real feeling or he's talking about the formal statement. So these are kind of variables that can be seen in Japanese business conversation. Another example is that one of the factory workers whose Japanese language is not very high, because his identity is a Japanese language learners, and because his identity is Japanese language learners, he kept using polite form to his colleagues. then he was kind of not invited to dinner with the other people because of the distance that he created with the polite form. But when he stopped using that, a lot of colleagues asked him to join the dinner. So the polite form, as well as showing the respect, but also polite form can create the distance in between people. So this is sometimes observed in the Japanese workplace. It is more complex when the SNS in business communication is observed. There are quite a few interesting examples of the business communication within SNS or mobile instant messaging. And actually, the mobile instant messaging, SNS, is used for expanding formal and informal business network. What's the recent study? That means sometimes mostly for informals, in fact. When they are talking about their formal exchange, their formal information, they use emails or a little bit more complex platforms such as Slack to get the securities of the networks. But when they want to talk about kind of friendly conversation, non-business conversation, to sort of strengthen their human relation ties, they use something else. That is called line. Line is one of the Japanese software application. It's very easy application, and if you come to Japan, you see most people has used lines for informal communications. In fact, this is the data in 2019. The line is installed 96.5% of mobile devices in Japan, whereas Instagram 68, 67, Facebook 16, and Slack is about 10%. So you can see this line is the default application for everybody. So it's assumed everybody has line address and they can communicate with line. And I am going to talk about the line conversations. Line interface looks like this. And as you can see here, there are quite a few participants, but today I'm going to talk about two different groups of the participants. The first group of participants is it's both of them social enterprises. One social enterprise, and this social enterprise has a collaboration with food banks. You probably know that there are disprivileged people in Japan, and they sometimes have difficulties in getting food for their children. So they collaborate with food banks and they distribute. But the point is, the needy person usually volunteers to work in this area, in these organizations. So there are receivers who also need food, but also distributors, people working as distributors also need food. They provide the food to get the sort of priority distributions of the food. And this is what line looks like. And as you can see the face, there are quite a few non-Japanese participants among these. And this person agreed to show her face, but she is Bangladesh, from Bangladesh, and she works in a hotel. They provide the food on Friday, and there are another group, board members. The board members are the kind of members, head of these food banks, and they create a board. And under this board, there are working group to provide the food. So there are two different kind of people in this data. This board members are mostly graduates of universities or graduate school of the universities, high level degree of the universities, and the groups who provide the food, the volunteers, they are mostly non-Japanese workers or Japanese people who need some help. Sometimes they were single parents, sometimes they have very sick parents or children, and they cannot work very long time in the day. So these people come here. And this is the kind of what it looks like in chat. As I said, there are 5 participants in, we call it pantry team. And these are socially displaced persons. There are 5 Japanese, 2 Bangladesh, 1 Brazilian, 1 Ghanaian in this data. And also in board member, one of them, the chairperson is American. And 3 board members work with them. So 3 board members exchange their opinions and comments and make decisions through line, and also when it comes to the formal, they use email. And for this pantry team, they are, the mobile phone is the only device that they can communicate with. So there are no email exchange, mostly line exchange among these people. And what I found among these communication between these people were both of the team use stamps, and stamps is a stickers in English probably. Stamp is in Japanese words. It's a kind of visual pictures, and also aisatsu has been very important. And also finally Ho-Ren-So communication can be seen in the different places in the world. The point is that the first two aspects of the Japanese conversation, stamps and aisatsu, are very easily acquired by those people who use Japanese as a sort of foreign language or second language in this case. And Ho-Ren-So is a hard one. Even though the non-Japanese speakers learn how to use stickers and how to use aisatsu, Ho-Ren-So is something takes very long time to acquire. So let me demonstrate some of the data. First, stamps. And stamps are used in various ways, but in this case, there are quite a few stamps among. I have to make sure that these are all adults. The youngest one is 37-year-old, and oldest one is 65. So even adults use a lot of stamps. When they are surprised, they said it's bikkuri, surprised. The picture shows the bikkuri. And studies of stamps show that if the speakers or if the interlocutors use stamp very well, it helps develop a team, and their ties, human ties, are very strong and expressing the emotion. Also, stamp can be used to avoid the unnecessary or silence among them. So the people continue to send stamps when they don't know how to say. So these are the kind of stamps. And it's interesting, if you can see the right-hand side, this is another stamp, and also emoticons within the text. And I have the data for 6 months. And within these 6 months, there are 405 tons in this group, and 82 are the stamps. So you'll see how frequent they use the stamp Okay. Aisatsu is another phrases that occur very, very frequently. And probably if you are Japanese language learners, you'll be able to know that Ohayou gozaimasu, good morning. And this is not the pantry people. This is highly educated board members, but they still use these kind of stamps. And the discussions that they are doing, it's a kind of serious doing. They are arranging the time for their meeting, actual Zoom meeting that they are planning. So this is aisatsu. However, there are some aisatsu, the greeting, that is not very friendly for beginning level learners, only for job site. I'm going to introduce those different types of the greetings now. The very frequently of these orders are frequency order. The most frequently occurred aisatsu is otsukaresama desu. Otsukaresama desu is thank you for your work, or you must be tired, in literally means. But when they leave, they would usually say otsukaresama desu. So otsukaresama desu is very frequent way. So when people work in any part of the Japanese organizations, even the beginning Japanese language learners remember these words because this is frequently used when they particularly leave. And the second frequent one is yoroshiku onegai shimasu. It's probably, there's not really much good translation of this, but there are some interpretation for this, which is different in situation to situations. But literally meaning that please be nice with me, or please do the job that I asked, or these kind of things. And the third frequent one is sumimasen. Sumimasen is literally means I am sorry, but a lot of Japanese language researchers tell that there are multiple meanings for this. Depending on the situations, it can be interpreted I am sorry, but sometimes it can be interpreted thank you, and also excuse me. There are 7 or 8 ways, depending on research papers, to interpret this. So this is a kind of has complex meanings and also situation dependent. You need to interpret this word very much paying attention to the situation that the interlocutor say this word, sumimasen. And then arigatou gozaimasu. It's thank you. And this is not, this doesn't really mean the complex situations. It's literally thank you very much. And then the 5th one is ohayou gozaimasu. Therefore, the greeting that Japanese learners usually learn, ohayou gozaimasu or konnichiwa, are not very frequent. I mean, frequent, but not as frequent as these otsukaresama desu or yoroshiku onegai shimasu. And also, so therefore, the Japanese learners, when they work in a Japanese organization, it might be a good idea to observe the other workers very well and see in what occasions they use these words. These words can be modulator of the strong power relations, and also soften the human relations as well. And also Japanese language learners, I would advise pay attention to the way that sumimasen is used. There are quite a few variations of this sumimasen, but sumimasen can be used in a different situation for the different meanings. So this is the frequency. In both members, there are examples of these utterances. よろしくお願いします in the meetings. And also in the left-hand side, this is pantry members. So that means the non-Japanese, non-native speakers are there too. Okay, so this is the so this can be found in both type of the groups, kind of elite group and also socially displaced persons group. Okay, so when the people use Japanese for the on the job site, there are quite a few of the politeness devices that make the that works for the better human relations. I would say one is the sticker, in particularly instant mobile messaging, and you can buy stickers, in fact, and choose your kind of own selections and try to show your uniqueness among the others. But as I said, stickers can be used. And also, it's interesting, non-native speakers of the Japanese languages, they use these stickers very well. And actually, the stickers usually accompany a Japanese language phrases, which is usually correct or right way, adequate way to say. So you can just choose the phrases that you'd like to show, which helps non-native speakers to communicate well in this work teams. And also greetings is a kind of politeness devices. So よろしくお願いします。お疲れ様。ありがとうございます。And also there are another politeness device is long vowel. Mas, as I said, is the formal sentence and expressions. But when you say mas, then it helps you sound friendly to the other. So this is another one that I noticed. And as I said earlier, these two factors, stickers and multimodal greetings, are kind of easy one. Most of the Japanese second language speakers use it very well. And I cannot really see these stickers are used by non-native speakers or native speakers. So this is rather simple one. But the point that I like to make is Ho-Ren-So today. Ho-Ren-So is the short form of 報告, 連絡, and 相談. And if you put these three together in the beginning, it makes Ho-Ren-So and sounds exactly the same as spinach. For those who don't know this, I have just summarized the meaning of the Ho-Ren-So. Ho is the short form of 報告, and this means to report. So this means that regular reporting to either subordinates or superiors. And they try to sort of inform, update the event and also informations to everybody. And ren is 連絡. And this means to share. And ho mostly is about the past event, as I said earlier. And ren is the future event. What is going to happen is usually ren or 連絡. And finally, so is the short form of 相談, and it's to consult. And whenever people make decisions, they need to consult with their seniors or colleagues very frequently before they make a statement or make decisions. So these are the kind of so, and these three integrated into their job site discussions. And Yasuka says that Ho-Ren-So is embedded in education and daily life. So it's very implicitly become a base of the Japanese style communication in Japanese language. Okay, let me show some of the examples. First, Ho. Koga says, 昭島の終わってしまったみたいです。It looks like soup run at Akishima seems to have finished. So this is the report of what happened in the past. This is the pantry team. And Ren, it's the informing the plan and future event. Like Naoya says, 多分14時ぐらいになると思います。I'll be arriving around 14. And Mio says, 国立駅前ですよ。I'll be meeting in front of 国立 station. And Keigo says, ヤホ駅でトイレに寄っていくので10分遅れるかもしれません。ごめんなさい。I'll go to toilet on my way. I may be late around 10 minutes. So these are the very, very detailed and the minute by minute information when they meet. And when they exchange these detailed information, they would say, if you are going to be late for 1 minute, they would usually provide information to others so that they will not sort of worry about meeting their time. And finally, Ho and Ren put together, sharing spaces of the and the time. For example, can you come around 3:30 to get this luggage? And the other person says, I'll be getting the same thing. I'll be going to the toilet on the way, so I'll be late for 10 minutes. I'm sorry. So these help them to meet on time and to make it effectively. So it's the consultations. This is an example between Koga and Mio. I am in front of the station early. Nobody will show up soon. This is what Mio says. Mio is a leader of the group. And Mio says, assign some jobs to those who come to work early, will you? And then Koga says, shall I go to the venue earlier? What kind of jobs should I assign? So Mio says, something like sorting out the food, whatever they can do. Koga says, I understood. So this is the soul part. The lower workers, Koga, consult with Mio in terms of what they would like to do. And in board meeting as well, these university graduates also do the so in the board meeting. They also do a lot of Ho and Ren, but they would also do the so. So the same frequency, they use a lot of Ho-Ren-So. And also Ho-Ren-So is usually accompanied with acknowledgement. 了解, I understood. わかりました. Hi. These are all phrases that shows that he or she understood what others reported or informed. So acknowledgement is this. These with small children, those with small children come at 3. Keigo, 了解です confirmed. And Hidemi, could you bring the notebook? Confirmed. These are the kind of acknowledgement of them. So Ho-Ren-So is always accompanied with acknowledgement. Finally, I'll show you the final examples. Acquisition of Ho-Ren-So and acknowledgement. So it says that Jamia and Cindy are very high-level Japanese language learners. And when Mio says something, you could see Cindy and Jamia always, yes, please, or confirmed, like other Japanese people. While the Efua is the Ghanaian Japanese language speaker. She's very beginner. She's a beginner. And she does not do this, gain this Ho-Ren-So, particularly acknowledgement as well. When they get to one places, Efwa didn't know where they are meeting. So Efwa says, where are we meeting? And Konga says, Yahoo station next exit. He wrote in English in this case, because Efwa did not understand Japanese very well. So Koga says, Yahoo no ho desu, again in Japanese, around Yahoo station. Mio says, Chari-san wakarimasu ka? It's a leader. And Chari-san is a nickname of Efwa, by the way. So Efwa says, no reply. And Efwa, 3時に来てください. Please come at 3. And sorry, this is Mio. I'm sorry, this is mistake. Mio says, 3時に来てください. And Efwa says, no reply. And next day, Efwa again says, いつも通りですか? Because of the lack of acknowledgement, nobody understands if she understands or not. And finally, Efwa did not show up at the space where they are meeting. And Keigo was kind of worried. Efwa, where are you? This is the line conversation. And Mio says, I called Efwa, but no response. Mio says, we arrive at 2 minutes past 1 at Yahoo station. I will, sorry. And Efwa says, I forgot to tell Efwa that there is a rapid train from Tachikawa station. And Efwa says, もう着きました. I'm already here. And Mio says, どこ? Efwa says, you mean where I am? In English. This shows Efwa did not report minute by minute locational information to Mio. That's why Efwa lost her place, and Efwa lost and did not know where they are meeting. And other people did not really know where Efwa was. So lack of this Ho-Ren-So invited this situation. So, conclusion. Acquisition by learners, Japanese language learners frequently observed was sticker use and greeting. However, less frequently observed was the Ho-Ren-So and acknowledgement type of communication. So these are the kind of higher level when the people want to use Japanese on the job site. And it's really, as at the end of this data collection, we found out Efwa was excluded from the group. She was not coming to the group anymore. And I think it's not really the reason why that she didn't do the Ho-Ren-So, but people find it very difficult to work with Efwa. So I think these lack of this literacy in Japanese work language might invite potential exclusion. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Professor Tanaka, and thank you very much for keeping to time. I'm going to take Chair's prerogative here to ask a couple of questions first, if I may. You showed the statistics about the usage of line, Instagram, Facebook. You didn't mention Twitter. I'm wondering how much people use Twitter as well.
When I checked the Twitter, the list didn't include the Twitters. So that's why I didn't include it. But Twitter is increasing very much now in the different studies. So I think it's close to Instagram or even the higher than the Instagram now. It's 2019 data. And at that time, Twitter was not as much as popular as the other application software.
Okay, great. Another thing that I wanted to ask, and this comes from one of your sort of last parts, getting to the conclusion. My impression is that this process of Ho-Ren-So and how it works with line, because obviously you use line as the main example, strikes me as being very time consuming, that you need to be involved in the conversation the whole time. You can't sort of just go away and come back to it late on. Is this correct, or am I missing something?
Well, yes, it is. Actually, there are kind of SNS phobia among the high school students, because they always need to look at mobile phones when they were trying to be in a sort of circle of the friends. So they get tired, and it's quite time consuming. But at the same time, they really need to get these, people feel it's very necessary to get these within a sort of network of the communication to be the insider of the groups. I think you know that how the Japanese feel that they are excluded out of the groups, like Murahachibu.
Excellent. Thank you. We have some questions which have come in, so I will read some of these out to you. So we have a question from Yana Mancheva. Thank you very much for joining us today, Yana. The question is, in a Japanese workplace, when and how does one decide to start using more casual speech with his or her colleagues? For example, if one is a newly recruited member of a company.
Well, thank you very much. This was very interesting questions. Usually, the newcomer would stay in a polite form, and probably the experienced member will start using the casual form. And if that happens, I think you could also try to use the casual forms, but we need to observe the speaker. Because some speakers still want to use the polite form and casual form to show their hierarchical relationship. And for Japanese students, probably this is not the sort of type of information that the person who asked this question was. But when I observe these students, when they both the same grader, the second grader in universities. But if one person noticed that although one speaker is the second grader, he's 1 year older than the other, he start to use polite forms. So age is, among young people, very big factor as well.
Excellent, thank you very much. We also have a question here from Alex Cravel. The question is the use of stickers in line something that occurs upwards? So would juniors in a company use stickers to communicate with senior members, or is it just the senior members who are able to use it, or is it just something you do between people of your own level?
Okay, within this data, there are kind of similar levels of the people, both members and the workers. So they immediately start to use the stickers. However, in the separate studies within IT companies, they do not use stickers between the people with the hierarchical differences. Rather, they would use photographs instead of stickers.
Excellent, thank you. I have an additional question I wanted to ask here. Some of the examples you were giving, particularly quite early on, it struck me that there was I don't know whether it was the particular examples you were pulling out, but the style of language to me seemed particularly casual, quite young person speech, maybe even quite female speech. And I was wondering whether this is just the examples you used in this particular presentation, or whether there is some sort of people change their style of language to be sort of younger and maybe less male in some cases. Yeah. I mean, there tends to be two very different styles of male and female speech.
You mean the Keigo example that I used in the beginning?
And I think very early on as well with some of like Masu and things like this. It just struck me as being the sort of thing I hear from teenagers and girls more than I would hear from men.
Masu, the long vowels, can be found all the age groups, not only the young groups. And also to make it, even the 65, the oldest person use Masu very often. But in the very beginning part of this data, when I use the Keigo, these are really hardcore business people. And the way that he used, ore konna no ya nandakedo ne, very, very casual ways, were also didn't sound like young person to me. It was more like a Tokyo dialect. The Tokyo, when the people use dialect, it's more like it's casual feelings to them, and also honest tone to them.
Okay, excellent. I believe that Mike also has a question. If you want to go ahead, Mike, and unmute yourself.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you, Hiro. That was really absolutely fascinating talk. And I was thinking a lot about, advice for learners, particularly, say, for example, students who are moving to Japan. And, when we think about something like English as a lingua franca, as you know, with English as a lingua franca used, around the world as a language of business communication and everything, social communication, there's been a kind of decoupling between the language, the words, and cultural expectations. So, as you know, with a lot of English as a lingua franca now, there's a big argument that, native speaker norms are not relevant. It's really the local way it's used in that particular situation. Japanese people are speaking to Thai people in English. What British or American people do culturally is not relevant. Now, of course, in Japan, particularly for, say, Japanese learners moving to Japan, that situation is different, isn't it? Because, at the moment, Japanese isn't a lingua franca in the same way that English is, for example. I think it relates a lot to issues of, this question has come up a couple of times about things like formality and informality in Japanese. For say our learners from Cardiff University and elsewhere moving to Japan, what advice do you have for them about this issue?
I think as you said, the history of lingua franca in the case of English is kind of long now, and there are a lot of people argue about this cultural assumption and language per se should be treated separately, and the native speaker cannot bring in their expectation of the culturally specific way of using English languages. And I think it should be this consideration should be given to Japanese language, I think. However, the history is very short. Recently, except for some, the Chinese or Korean people who speaks very good Japanese, like native speakers, non-native speakers of Japanese are very few, even in the companies. And particularly for English speakers, when they come, even Russian, the people tend to use English. So Japanese language speakers are recently increased, but awareness about the Japanese as a lingua franca, it's not very much prevalent yet. So the Japanese language learners, when they come to Japan, I would say they pay attention to these kind of cultural assumptions behind the language, as well as the vocabularies and grammar, kind of lexicogrammatical aspect of their Japanese language, which is probably equally important. Sometimes, as I said, has a potentially exclude the speaker as well. So, it's very hard for Japanese people to get their mind like English as a lingua franca used in English. It's not yet that prevalent yet. So I would say language learner need to pay attention to these elements.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We have another question that's come in, and I'm going to rephrase it because the person who asked the question, Barbara Pitokoni, has made it clear. Unfortunately, she missed the first bit of the presentation, but you'll be able to see the rest of it later, Barbara, on YouTube. Barbara's asking a question about the issue of using Ho-Ren-So, and I think line comes into this as well within a company, because obviously we get used to the fact there's a very strong status situation. Everybody has the Meisei, which makes it clear about people's status. But to what degree do participants need to be aware of people's qualifications and their level when conducting these sort of conversations? It seems as though the normal style of conversation and communication is very different to when it's face-to-face.
Well, it's a good question. You mean that when they talk in the online, the way that they talk is different from face-to-face conversation?
Yeah, well, I think that's the point of the question. Yes.
Well, to me, the line conversation, as I said, is the more like informal ways of communicating, particularly for board members. When they exchange their information on the emails, and also when they talk in a Zoom, they are more formal. And even in the Zoom meetings, in the board members, they don't talk about their families. But in line, they put the pictures of their family, newborn baby, and they go very different ways sometimes. So it's also depend on the what kind of software they use, what kind of platform they use. As I mentioned earlier, when the company use Slack as a sort of SNS, instant mobile messaging tools, the way they talk on Slack and the way they talk online is different. So it's kind of platform sensitive use.
But taking the example of the board members, if there was a chat, say, let's stick with Line, if there was a group on using Line, which was mostly board members, but there are also some junior members there, maybe professional service type staff, people who are normally there just to make sure the board members know what they're doing. Would they also engage in the conversation? And if they do engage in the conversation, would they still revert to using Kaggle because they're sort of not the main board members, or would they be allowed to be sort of quite casual?
It's a good question because I didn't pay attention to that, but there were actually the data that I have within a workers group. One of the board members sometimes come in because he's in a sort of not frequently, his attendance is very small there because he wants to let people work by themselves. But when he comes in, he's very formal. And that shows that everybody kind of sees him as a sort of one level beyond the group, because the way that he uses the formality of that he uses in the line. So it's the same thing when the workers are talking on a face-to-face, and when the sort of board member come in and talk, he kind of unintentionally or intentionally, he tried to keep a distance between these people. And that makes the workers also make a distance in between. So it's very similar in a way.
Okay, a follow-up from Barbara asking for clarification also. In terms of the way that Ho-Ren-So style works, would senior management sort of still want to sort of let junior members of staff knowing what they're doing minute by minute? I mean, the example of Line, you showed this constant communication, but is this something that would happen ordinarily?
I think it's, in this case, I think it's a management style of the managers. There are a lot of variables among the people. So even if they need Ho-Ren-So is important, some managers delegate the people and they don't really come to intervene the people's informations. They usually delegate those kind of responsibility to the team leaders. So in that case, team leaders are very, very conscious about detailed exchange of the information, but manager level does not really do that.
Excellent. We're nearly out of time. I'm going to ask one question myself again, because I'm really interested in how this dynamic works and when it can start. Now, obviously, for many of us who studied Japan, we've had problems and continue to have problems to go to Japan, but we're trying to make contact with organizations to do interviews. Is Line, in your view, an appropriate way to do this? I mean, historically, we would do faxes, emails. There's still sometimes people who want to do it by phone, but could we be contacting these people by Line? And in what way would you think that method would become overly casual, or should we keep it formal? How can we use this?
My feeling is that Line is not good for the interviews, adequate for the interview, because the Line conversation can continue probably 1 or 2 minutes or a little bit more, not more than that. If you want to interview, I think you would at least take 1 hour or so. Of course, Line has a sort of voice conversation function as well. So if you want to use the line instead of the telephone, that works.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'm afraid I know we still have some questions coming in, but this does bring us up to time. So I would really like to once again thank our speaker for taking the time to join us today. I would like to let you know that when this ends, you will be sent a short survey, and we'd really appreciate it if you could fill in that survey. Let us know what you thought about the event. Feel free to also make suggestions about topics we could potentially cover. Please do visit our YouTube channel. There is a link there, which I will try and drop into the chat in a minute, but otherwise just do a search. Today's presentation will also be up on YouTube shortly, and you'll be able to find the full list like that of everything that we've had. But if you could, in the usual Zoom way, feel free to use the clapping feature and everything to please show your appreciation for Professor Tanaka. And again, everybody, thank you very much for joining us today.
And the YouTube link is in the chat already now.
Excellent. Thanks to Mike.
Thank you very much, Professor Tanaka.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.